Is it possible that we might want to have some Windows devices as part of our lab? And the answer is a resounding yes. And those can be physical machines that are running Windows or virtual machines or both. In this nugget, we'll take a look at integrating and documenting what VMs and real Windows machines we have, and making sure we have good snapshots of any Windows-based VMs. The idea I'd like to chat with you about regarding this nugget and adding Windows to your lab environment is one word, and that is options. For example, if we have an existing computer network, and it could be wireless or wired, and we have a computer on that network that's running Windows, that computer could be part of your lab environment for the purposes of testing as a potential victim, or if you want to use it to launch attacks, you could do that as well from the Windows operating system itself by using some native tools that are part of Windows or by downloading and installing tools in the Windows OS. Now, if this is our Windows computer in our example, that's Windows 8, and it's a physical machine, let's put some documentation in place regarding what IP addresses we're going to use. So for the Windows 8 computer that's on the 192.168.1 network, let's say its IP address is .200. Now, one word of caution, if we're going to run attack tools from a virtual machine against this Windows computer that's hosting our virtualized environment, we definitely want to be careful about not taking down this computer, because if the machine crashes and it happens to be running VMware Workstation, we have other VMs running inside of it, that's going to cause a bigger problem as part of our lab. So we might want to reserve the machine that's running VMware Workstation as a machine we are not going to try to compromise, but instead only launch attacks from this machine. And the physical interface is using the IP address of .200 on the 192.168.1 network. I've also got another physical computer that's running Windows, and it's actually running Windows 10. And what I'd like to use for the IP address on it is .201. Also, each of those computers are using the default gateway of .1. That's my router. Now, as far as other additional Windows machines that we might want to bring in, I also have a virtual machine running Windows 8 that's running in VMware Workstation that's running on this Windows host. So I've got another copy of Windows 8 as a VM on this machine. And let's say we want that virtual machine to have the IP address of .199. We would just configure the network interface card of this virtual machine to be either bridged to the physical interface, or we could link it to a VMnet 0 if VMnet 0 is bridged to the physical interface. Both of those concepts we've talked about in previous nuggets in this course. On the other hand, if we're trying to keep these VMs completely separate from our physical network, we could associate them with VMnet 1 or VMnet 2 and not perform NAT services inside of VMware Workstation, and that would keep those virtual machines off of our production or the network that you don't want them to be on. I've also got another Windows device as a virtual machine, and it is a Windows 2012 server. And it's at the IP address of .111. And that Windows 2012 server has lots of services running, including DNS, web services, directory services, and others. So what we could do if we wanted to, we could have all these Windows machines as part of our lab environment, physical and virtual. We could have them point to .111 for DNS services. And then if DNS is configured and working on that 2012 server and the server is running and available, it can perform DNS services. We could also configure a backup for DNS as 8.8.8.8, which is a Google DNS server out on the internet. So that way, if for whatever reason DNS isn't configured or that virtual machine, the Windows 2012 server, is not up and running, the host will have a fallback to go to an alternate DNS server of 8.8.8.8. So as a summary, it's going to look like this. Also, what we'd want to do on our virtual machines, this guy and this guy, is once they're configured, we want to power them down and then make a snapshot so that we can return to that state in the future if we ever need to. So here on my Windows host computer that's running VMware Workstation, let me just check out my two VMs, one for Windows 8 as a VM and also the one for Windows Server. So let's verify the network connections. For Windows 8, it shows us that the network adapter is connected to VMnet 0, which in my case is bridging to my wired/wireless 192.168.1 network, which is great. And the Active Directory virtual machine, if we click on that, has lots of network adapters, but at least one of those is connected to VMnet 0. Also, when I mentioned that VMnet 0 is bridged over, as a reminder of how that works, if we go to Edit and select from the drop-down Virtual Network Editor and click on Change Settings and click on Yes for User Account Control, Here it shows us that VMnet 0 is bridged over to my Ethernet adapter. Now, just so you know, the Ethernet adapter, which is a wired connection from this host, connects to the 192.168.1 network. Also, what you should be aware of is that that same network is also connected to a wireless network here at my home office. So effectively, anybody connected to the 192.168.1 network, whether they're connected via wireless here in my home office or whether they're directly connected with a wired connection, are all in that same layer 2 broadcast domain. And we'll bring up the Windows 8 machine by clicking on Start, and we'll click on the Active Directory Windows 2012 server and click on Start. And I just want to verify the IP addresses, the default gateway, as well as the DNS configuration on each of those. So let's go to Windows 8. I'll go ahead and log in. So we'll log in as a user called user. And let's go to full screen by clicking on this little icon right here for full screen mode. And we'll click on the networking icon and click on Open Network and Sharing and change adapter settings. And here's our network adapter. We'll right click, go to Properties. We're going to go down to IP version 4, double click on it. And we want this virtual machine to have the IP address of .199. So let's go ahead and change that to 199. Default gateway is 1.1. The preferred DNS server is .111, which is our VM for the Windows 2012 server, and the alternate DNS is 8888. That looks great. We'll click on OK. Click on OK. Close the dialog boxes for control panel, and let's just do a quick ping out to the internet just to verify we have connectivity. So we'll ping www.google.com, and if that works, that means DNS is working. It also implies that we have internet connectivity, which is great. So let's go ahead and shut down this VM, this Windows 8 computer, using the Windows 8 methodology for doing that, and that'll gracefully shut down. Then we'll go back, we'll take off full screen mode, and we'll go to our Active Directory virtual machine. We'll go to full screen mode, and we'll log in here to verify its IP address as well. So to log in here, it says Control-Alt-Delete. That would be if it wasn't a virtual machine. Because this Windows computer is a virtual machine inside a VMware workstation, we're going to press Control-Alt-Insert, and that will go ahead and allow us to log on. So we'll log on as administrator with my lab password. And there's several ways of verifying the IP address here. We could go to the properties of the network adapters, that would work, or we could go to local server. And here it shows me that I've got my first network interface card labeled as management with the IP address of 192.168.1.111. We could also right click on the network adapter, go to Open Network and Sharing Center, change adapter settings, and then look at the details of that interface as well by going to Properties, double clicking on IP version 4, and verifying the details here. So here's our IP address, there's the default gateway. The preferred DNS server is a loopback address, which is the Windows 2012 server saying, hey, I'm my own DNS server, and if I can't reach my own DNS service, I'm going to try a Google DNS server at 8.8.8.8. So that all looks great. So we'll click on Cancel, close the dialog boxes. So let's go to Command Prompt and just verify we have basic connectivity. So I'm going to type in CMD, and let's do a ping out to www.google.com, and that is working as well. So that is great. And we'll shut down this puppy as well. So to do that, I'm going to click on the Windows icon and the power icon and shut down and continue, and that will gracefully close that down. Now, because VMware Tools is installed on this Windows 2012 server, I could have also just gone in VMware Workstation, right-clicked on that Active Directory server, and clicked on Power, selected Shutdown Guest, and that also would have gracefully shut it down because I have VMware Tools installed. So now what I want to do is make snapshots of each one of those. So to take a snapshot, we can go to Windows 8, first of all, right-click. And if we want to remove full screen mode, we can do that too. I'll go up here, take off full screen mode if we want to have the toolbar up here as well. However, the right-click also works. So we'll go to Windows 8, right-click. We'll go to Snapshot and Snapshot Manager. And I'm going to go ahead and remove. I'm going to delete my old snapshot by clicking on Delete. And then click on Take Snapshot. I'm going to call this Basecamp just to represent a time and space before we started compromising or messing with this virtual machine from an attack perspective. So we'll take that snapshot, we'll click on Close, and we'll do the same thing with Active Directory, that Windows 2012 server. Right-click, Snapshot, Snapshot Manager. We'll delete the old snapshot, click on Delete. Then we'll click on Take Snapshot, and we'll call this Basecamp as well. and click on Take Snapshot. I'd also encourage you not to keep multiple snapshots of the same virtual machine. It's going to eat up a lot of disk space. And if you don't have a lot of disk space, that's a problem. So I usually, as I'm building the labs, I'll keep the single previous snapshot. So I'll delete the old one, I'll create a new one, and then I'll move forward. Then, at any time we want to, we can roll back to that snapshot that we have saved in VMware Workstation. So that looks great. And now let's go ahead and check the IP addresses for our 2 physical hosts as well. The first physical host is the Windows 8 computer that's running VMware Workstation. So if we want to verify its IP address and information, we can right-click on the network icon, open Network and Sharing Center, click on Change Adapter Settings. Here's our physical network interface card. We'll right-click, go to Properties. We'll scroll down. We'll double-click on IPv4. There's its IP address of .200. The default gateway looks good. The primary DNS server looks good. And the secondary or alternate DNS server, we're going to change to 8.8.8.8. And click on OK. And OK again. So that looks good. And the last physical computer I need to check is my Windows 10 computer. So my Windows 10 computer, let's go to Network and Sharing Center, change adapter settings. So this computer has a wireless adapter that's currently disabled. It's got some VMware adapters as well, because it also has VMware Workstation installed on it. And it also has a pluggable gigabit Ethernet adapter that's in a USB port on this computer. That happens to be the only one that's currently connected to the physical network. So we'll right click on the pluggable, go to Properties, scroll down to IPv4, we'll double click on that. And it has the IP address of .201, that looks good. The default gateway is .1. The primary DNS server is our Active Directory Windows 2012 server at .111. And the alternate DNS server is 8.8.8.8, which looks perfect. So I'm going to click on Cancel because I'm not changing anything there. I just wanted to verify all the IP addresses that are in place on our 4 Windows computers, 2 of which are virtualized and 2 of which are physical computers. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I almost forgot, was that if we want our physical Windows computer, which is running VMware Workstation, to participate in VMnet 1 or VMnet 2 or some other virtualized network it's created, we'd simply go to the Properties of Networking. In fact, let's do that real quick. So here's the Windows physical computer. We'll go to VMware Workstation, and in VMware Workstation, we'll go to Edit and select from the drop-down Virtual Network Editor. Click on Change Settings. Click on Yes for User Account Control. And if we wanted this host, for example, to have a logical interface on the VMnet 1 network, with VMnet 1 selected, we'd come down here and check the checkbox that says Connect a Host Virtual Network Adapter to this network. And then we would have a new virtual interface on the host computer that could then communicate with other devices that are also connected to the 10.1.1 virtual network inside of VMware Workstation. Now, in my lab environment, I'm not going to actually connect a host to VMnet 1 because we're actually bridging everything over to my 192.168.1 network. But I wanted to remind you that if you are using, for example, VMnet 1 or VMnet 2 and you want direct connectivity to those logical networks, this is how you do it, by adding a logical adapter, a virtual adapter, to the host computer that's running VMware Workstation. So in this nugget, we've taken a look at 4 Windows computers. We documented what their IP addresses are going to be. We verified those IP addresses along with the default gateway and DNS information that each of them can use. And for the virtual machines, we powered them down gracefully. We also took snapshots of those so that you and I can return to those snapshots of those VMs if we need to. And that can be very handy in the event we try an attack and it maybe works too well and we cause a virtual machine to go toes up. We're like, oh, did that really happen? If we have a snapshot, we can restore back to the previous state before the attack, and that can help a virtual machine be ready once again for the next attack without being crippled before it starts. Hey, I'm glad you joined me for this nugget. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.